Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Football House. I'm Sam Basil, joined alongside Cole Hughes. And Cole, we're here, man. We're pretty much at the end of the road of the 2025 college football regular season. Thanksgiving has concluded, rivalry week is over, and we are looking at a very interesting landscape heading into conference championship games. We've got 9 games on the docket. We're going to go through all 9. But first, we're going to do a little bit of college football playoff discussion. The last committee rankings before the final rankings were released last night. A lot of discussion, a little bit of controversy, although I'll get into it in a little bit. I think it's a pretty solid ranking. But Cole, first off, how you doing?
I'm good, man. I mean, this season flew by. We're already at conference championship week. We're going to be getting ready for some college football playoff action coming up here in the next couple of weeks. So Army Navy in a couple of weeks as well.
Yep.
Always a great rivalry game. And, everyone that watches the show regularly knows that we love our rivalry games. So, excited. Lot to talk about. A lot of coaching changes. The carousel's moving, right? Certain coaches are leaving their schools, taking jobs at big time programs. That's, there's different waves, right? There's a lot of action that happens as a result of one coach going, and we're seeing that fully right now. And then there's some programs that can't find a coach, Penn State. So a lot to talk about, both on the field, off the field, the bracket, what that's going to look like, different scenarios. So I'm excited. This is why we do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's while you bring it up, let's mention the coaching carousel. Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Obviously, the big story, a late development in this coaching carousel this season, which started a lot earlier, I feel like, than usual. I mean, I feel like really the coaching carousel really got off to a big start with the firing of James Franklin at Penn State. But now it's been completely overshadowed by the departure of Lane Kiffin. He's gone. He's gone from Ole Miss to LSU. He's taken over and leaving an Ole Miss team that is potentially in the college football playoff without a head coach. Well, with an interim head coach, but obviously without his specific leadership that has pretty much that's coached them into a college football playoff spot. I have a couple thoughts, but I know there's been a lot of animosity towards Lane Kiffin with this decision. Before I get into my thoughts, what was your reaction to his departure on Sunday?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked a lot about this both on the show and just between us. Everyone that's on the show, you, me, Zimmer, Tondo, we've talked a lot about this, like in our group chats. Like, when something like this is strung out for as long as it was, right? I feel like for a whole month prior to Lane Kiffin going to LSU or announcing he was going there, his name was in the news. There was, speculation going on surrounding him. And then, even when it got down to the final hours, right, he came out and he said he was going to have a decision, after the Egg Bowl. That didn't happen. We didn't get it until, Sunday, right? So there was a lot of dramatics around it, I think, and it didn't need to go that way. I think Ole Miss is going to be fine, right? They got a hell of a team, a lot of studs. They've had a great year, and a big part of that is Lane Kiffin and his coaching staff, right? But I think they're going to be all right. We'll see what happens, but why he left, all those factors, I mean, I don't think it really has to do with money. I think Ole Miss would have paid him, just as much as LSU would have paid him. I think this came down to really for him recruiting, and it gives him a better shot to win a national championship. At least he thinks that at LSU compared to Ole Miss, just with, NIL funds and what they're able to do, when it comes to recruiting. But, look, we've seen this in the past, coaches leaving, and it's not always greener on the other side of the fence. I mean, we saw Brian Kelly leave Notre Dame for LSU, and that turned into a disaster, right? And Lane Kiffin has a history of going to different programs, kind of it ending ugly. A lot of people are saying, he's selfish, he's about him. I don't know the guy personally, so I'm not going to say anything in regards to that. But, I think it was a decision based off recruiting and not money. And, that's that. And I get why Ole Miss fans are upset, but at the same time, without Lane Kiffin, you're probably not where your program's probably not where it's at right now. And I think, this guy they got coming in, Pete Golding, seems like the players love him. I think this whole situation of Lane Kiffin leaving, it's kind of lit a fire under them. And I think it could potentially help them in the playoffs, help them make a run just based off of the emotion factor. We've had conflicting reports that, they wanted Lane to coach, and now the players are coming out and saying, that was never discussed. We didn't say that. So where the truth lies, I don't know, but it's definitely a saga, and it's going to be fun to see what Ole Miss can do in the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been thinking about this a lot. I really look, the animosity that's been, expressed towards Lane Kiffin, obviously he knew this was going to happen. I don't really feel a lot of sympathy, for the reaction to his decision. And that's not saying like I think what he really did was the most evil thing you can do in college football, right? I think, it was a business decision, and I think he's living with it, right? So, and he's basically what I'm saying is, he's a big boy. He can handle this, right? And he can, coach a successful LSU team to kind of prove and rationalize why he made this decision. The biggest thing that sucks for me with Lane Kiffin, this whole situation right now, is based on the way the college football calendar currently works. This is going to happen a lot more in coming seasons. There's a guy on TikTok. I'll try and tag his video at a later point, but he made a really good point in that this has kind of been, around the time when coaches have always made these changes. They've always moved to their new schools, right? Because right now it's December. If you're the 8th best team in the country, back in the day, you wouldn't be in the BCS. You wouldn't be in the 14 playoff. So now it's time to, all right, let's figure out what we got to do. Let's start recruiting out of the portal. Then in a couple months, you have to get your spring practices ready because that's so crucial for setting yourself up for success in the, late summer, early fall games and stuff. So the calendar for how these coaching changes happen and how the portal works and how spring practices work has not really caught up to the season structure changing due to the extended college football playoff, right? Like, I feel like there would still be this animosity toward Lane Kiffin 5 or 6 years ago if he made a similar decision like this. But the fact that, the 8th best team in the country can now compete for a national championship makes this a lot worse. And it makes it seem a lot worse than it would have been maybe 7 or 8 years ago, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying. I think two things, right? Like, I think people are freaking out because he went to another SEC school, right? And it's right there, right? So it's within your conference, right? It's within the same recruiting area. So he's going to be trying to, get recruits from the same area of the country. So I think that's why there's animosity, right? But the way he looks at it as is, all right, I've been at Ole Miss, right? And every year we've gotten better. And this year was kind of the climax, right? This is as high as he thought Ole Miss could go, right? And I think that's why he took the LSU job. But I don't know. I mean, I think we'll see what happens. I think maybe, people want to go to Ole Miss now because, they're on the map. They're, like you're saying, they're one of the top 10 teams in the country, right? So, yeah, I don't know. We'll see what happens. But I think also, like you talked about, you think this is going to happen a lot more, right? With coaches leaving for other schools. I'm not so sure about that because if you look, like even this year, right? Look at the amount of coaches, even within the last month, right, that have announced that they're staying with their program or they've signed extensions, right? So you have – Clark Lee did it. I wrote them down earlier. Matt Rule got an extension earlier this year with Nebraska. Brent Key today, they announced he's staying at Georgia Tech. Joey McGuire, Texas Tech, right? So there's a lot of these coaches, Rhett Lashley, Eli Drinkwitz, Mike Elko, like a lot of these coaches that could leave their schools that they're at right now to go get a big time job, right? An LSU, a Penn State, or, whatever it may be in future years, a Michigan, Ohio State, whatever, right? And they're deciding to stay with their programs, right? So, I don't know. We'll see what happens. I think it just depends on the coach. It depends on the opportunity, and it depends on the potential recruiting that you can do.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, because at the same time, the extended playoff, as much as it creates these problems for the calendar, right? And you have to make changes around that. It also gives a lot of these coaches, it gives a coach at Nebraska, Matt Rule, it gives him, more incentive to try and get into the playoff as maybe an 8, 9, 10 seed, rather than getting, trying to get into the Big Ten title picture. So yeah, I feel like it could really go both ways, but no matter what, I just feel like when these changes do happen, there's going to be still a lot more frustration, just because there's going to be more teams kind of left in the dust. I just feel like we're going to see, this is not the last time we're going to see a coach leave a playoff team before the playoffs, just in the way the calendar is structured.
No, and I mean, everyone's talking about Lane Kiffin, right? But what about like Bob Chesney at JMU? He's leaving. Both the coaches in the American Championship this week are gone, right? Yeah. Eric Morris is going to OK State, and John Sumrall is going to Florida, right? So, Lane Kiffin is the main topic of discussion, but these coaches are leaving their programs, and they might potentially be playoff teams. But for those guys, it's looked at, oh, all right, you're making a big jump. You're going from a Tulane to Florida, or you're going from North Texas to Oklahoma State to try and put them back on the map in the Big 12. So it's a little different because those schools aren't, top 10 teams, or haven't been consistently good. Ole Miss has, right? So it's a little different. It just depends on the scenario. But I get both sides of it. I get Ole Miss fans being upset, but at the same time, when this all cools down and in a couple months or whatever, like you ask an Ole Miss fan 10 years from now, they're going to say, Lane Kiffin was a huge part of our program's history, so.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of whether or not Tulane will get into the college football playoff, let's take a look at some brackets. So this bracket that you're seeing on screen right now is a bracket that we at the Football House made this past Sunday. This was based on the results of our own top 25 poll. So as you can see, we've got Ohio State, Indiana, Georgia, Oregon as our bye teams. Texas A&M, after that loss to Texas, they fall all the way down to 7th. A couple more highlights: Notre Dame at the 9 spot, Alabama at the 10. Virginia, in our situation, would have the ACC auto bid, or rather, I would say they'd be the 4th best conference champ as the projected ACC champion. And then our 5th best conference champ is JMU. Right on the bubble for at-large teams, we've got BYU, Texas, and Utah. And then on the auto bid bubble, we've got Tulane and then North Texas. Whoever's, figuring it out, whoever's going to win the American championship game would be on the bubble there. I wanted to point out that I'm calling it the auto bubble because instead of the group of 5 bubble, because considering how the ACC is shaking out this year, we need to remind people that these spots are not Power 4 guaranteed spots. They are for the 4 best conference champion spots, and that does not guarantee the Power 4 team will earn those spots. And I think that's a very important distinction to make, especially this year when you look at the latest committee playoff field bracket. And they did something that I've never seen before. So getting into it, they've got Ohio State, Indiana, Georgia, Texas Tech in the bye territory, Notre Dame, the 10 seed, Alabama, the 9 seed. And then in the 11 and 12 seed, they decided not to make a stand on who they projected the ACC champ, the American champ, or the Sun Belt champ to be. And they just left that 11 and 12 seed spots open for just the next 2 best conference champions. Were you surprised by that at all when you were watching the show and they put that in those spots?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little surprised just because, there's no history of them doing it, right? But
Yeah,
at the same time, I also think it's the right call, right?
totally.
Because then it doesn't give fan bases or teams or players or coaches, whatever, right? Certain expectations going into this conference championship week. I think they did a good job with, we kind of know at this point, like, we already know who's guaranteed, who's a lock. We know who's on the bubble, and there are a couple teams there on the bubble that might get in, might not. Like Notre Dame, Miami are the two big ones. BYU, right? Those are the bubble teams. Texas, even maybe. But there's 9-10 teams that we know are going to be in the college football playoff. We don't know what their seed will be, right? Depending on what happens this week. But like a team like Alabama, right? They moved Alabama ahead of Notre Dame, put them at number 9, which I thought was really surprising. But that's pretty much the committee telling you, like, look, even if Alabama loses against Georgia this week in the SEC championship and they have 3 losses, they're still going to be one of the top 12 teams that are in the college football playoff, I think. Right. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, they'd be the first 3-loss team to make the college football playoff under this format.
Yes, I believe so. I don't have the proof to check you on that, but I believe you're right.
It's just interesting, and I think they're showing us too, for the most part, with the exception of BYU, that they're not penalizing teams for being in a championship game, right? Mm-hmm. If they go to their conference championship and they end up losing, they're not gonna penalize them too much. Now BYU is a little different because they're ranked 11, so if they lose to Tech, they'll have 2 losses, right? But if they get blown out, they're probably not going to be a playoff team. And then you have Virginia and Duke. I think if Virginia wins, period, they're going to be in. Duke, they have 5 losses. If they win, they're not going to be in. That opens the door for James Madison potentially. Yeah, a lot of different scenarios. I think the big topic of discussion right now is the Miami Notre Dame argument, right? Because you look at both these schools, they both have 2 losses. Miami beat Notre Dame earlier in the year head to head, but Miami has 2 bad losses. They lost to Louisville, which is not even a team that's in the discussion, and then SMU, right? Those are 2 tough losses. Notre Dame, yeah, they lost head-to-head to Miami, but their other loss was to A&M. So those are 2 teams that are, one's a definite in the playoff in A&M, and then Miami's a potential. So I think if you're looking at their losses, I think you give Notre Dame the edge there. You give Miami the edge in the head-to-head. Strength of schedule, I think they're like both right near each other. I think Notre Dame's like 45th and they're 47th or something like that. They're really close. So it's going to be interesting to see, so far we've seen with the each week leading up to this point that the committee has consistently ranked Notre Dame ahead of Miami. And a lot of people are saying like, hey, when it comes down to it, they might put Miami in over Notre Dame because of that head-to-head win. Well, if that were the case, I think they would be ranking Miami ahead of Notre Dame, all these weeks that we've had the bracket or the rankings come out. So I don't see a path for Miami realistically. I think it's gonna be given to Notre Dame over Miami, but if BYU wins, then potentially neither of these teams get it.
Yeah, I agree. And before I get into my thoughts on that, there was a 3-loss team in the college football playoff last year. And you know who it was?
Give me the conference.
SEC.
Was it Bama?
It was Alabama.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
there you go. A little bias for Bama.
But no, I think Alabama is I think they're a playoff team. I still think they might be a playoff team if they lose to Georgia. I think the committee put Notre Dame below Alabama so that Notre Dame could be the next at-large team to fall out if they need to exclude another at-large team. If you ask me, I put Texas on the bubble here in this graphic just because that's what the committee showed. I think they're out. I think, again, they're another team that's Steve Sarkisian has, kind of been getting on the soapbox talking about how, he's regretting scheduling Ohio State if it means that it's going to, penalize them later on in the season. They're not getting penalized for a strong out-of-conference loss in Ohio State. Everyone said it, but I'm going to say it here again. They are getting penalized for losing to Florida. They're getting penalized for losing
I'm 100% with you, Basil. I mean, look,
conference. It's not a hot take. It's just yeah.
They want to, I agree with you. They like Sark in Texas. They want to spin it like, oh well, if we didn't beat or if we didn't play Ohio State and lose to them, and look, it was only a 7-point game, right? And Ohio State's undefeated, right? So I think that helps Texas' argument. But like, I think it helps them more than it hurts that the fact that they lost because they kept it close to the number one team in the country that was undefeated. I think it actually helps them. But look, imagine if they didn't have Ohio State that first week and they play some no-name school, right? So then they have 2 losses, right? You have a loss to Florida at Florida, and then you have a loss to Georgia. Well, they'd be 2-loss team, but then you have to consider, what about Vandy? What about Utah? Those are other 2-loss teams, and they're not in the discussion either, right? So it kind of hurts your argument. I mean, I get that Miami and Notre Dame are 2-loss teams, and they're in it. They're in the discussion, but there's also a lot of 2-loss teams out there that had great years that just didn't put up the numbers or the wins in against the opponents they needed to get there. There were other programs like Vandy, like Utah, schools like that. The one thing about Texas that I think they do have an argument is that they had 3 wins against, at the time, I think top 10 opponents. They beat Oklahoma in the Red River rivalry. They beat Vandy, and then they beat Georgia, or then they beat A&M at the last game of the year, which was a huge win for them, right? So I just think, look, there's 12 teams. You weren't one of the top 12 teams. You had some great wins against ranked opponents, but you lost that Florida game, and that's a huge mark against you. I think if it was someone else, it wasn't Florida, then maybe you're in the discussion, but that Florida loss hurts you really bad. And I think that's pretty much what's there for them. I mean, if this was a 16 playoff, field, they'd be in it, but it's 12 and you're not one of the top 12 teams.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's, and everyone online, everyone kind of in the college football discussion sphere, whether online or on TV or in print, they're really pointing out this quote because it's like it feels like, and there's also the headline with Alabama moving their matchup with USF next year to 2032. It seems like the SEC is trying to justify their frustrations by moving these harder, potentially better out of conference games later in their future schedules to try and schedule easier out of conference games. But like, there's really nothing you can make the argument with when you lose to a bad team in your own conference.
And the whole Florida aspect of it too. Miami beat Florida, right? So then there's that too, right? So you'd put probably Miami over Texas even if they had 2 losses because they beat Florida.
Yeah.
So
in terms of where I think things can go, I think if Virginia beats Duke, they're in.
I agree.
And then it's the winner based on the committee. I mean, we've put JMU higher than the 2 American teams, but if we're going by the committee right now, it's if Virginia beats Duke, then it's them, and then the winner of the American Championship game. If BYU beats Texas Tech, I think Texas Tech slides down. BYU takes the Big 12 spot. Texas Tech is not eliminated, but I do think Notre Dame gets pushed out. I think Texas is out. I think Miami is out. I don't see any scenario in which Miami can get their way back into the playoff field. But then it gets really shaky once we start talking about a Duke win over Virginia. Obviously, Duke did not even make the College Football Playoff Committee's top 25. They were not in the AP top 25. They were not in the Football House top 25. What do we do if Duke beats Virginia?
Well, I mean, I think if Duke beats Virginia, you're not going to have an ACC team in the college football playoff, which is crazy to think about.
Yeah.
I think if Duke wins that game, then that opens the door, because then your top 4 conference champions are going to be the SEC, the Big 10, the Big 12, and then the American would be that 4th, right? So then that opens the door for James Madison to come in as, a group of 5 auto bid. So, things could get crazy. We talked a little bit about this today earlier, amongst ourselves. The easiest thing to happen is if BYU wins and Virginia wins, then those 2 teams get in, Notre Dame's out, and then there you go, right? Texas Tech falls, but they're still in. But if Duke can somehow pull it off against Virginia, we might see the Dukes in college football playoffs, which would be crazy.
And remember, that's James Madison still has to win that game for that even to be put in play too.
Right, that
so
too.
Then,
I mean, they're playing Troy. They should win. I think the spread right now is like 24.5. So that would be a major upset if JMU didn't win that game. But I also do think that they'll have to win that game, pretty decidingly, right? But I don't know. We'll see.
Totally. I'm gonna throw one last hypothetical at you before we get into the winners here. Duke wins, Troy wins, so then the American team, the American champion, goes into the 11 seed. Who gets the 12? Is it Duke? Is it potentially a Conference USA winning Kennesaw State? I think that's a reach, but
I think that's a reach. I think if that were to happen, right, which would be crazy if Troy won, then I think you're looking at potentially maybe the winner of the Mountain West.
Yeah.
In Boise State and UNLV. But I don't know. I mean, that would be crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll see. We'll probably have plenty more time to spin out some of these crazy hypotheticals, but let's get into all 9 conference championship games. I'm still sad that I can't say 10. I really wish I could, we could still do that, but in a few years, we'll be able to do that once again, once the Pac-12 gets back up and running in full. So let's start off with that big game that we were talking about. It's going to be a tough matchup for Troy. ESPN, their matchup predictors got them at a 91% chance of victory for James Madison. Like you said, this spread is 23.5 points in favor of JMU. But let's play hypotheticals here. I know that you did not pick James Madison to win this game, but you did not pick Troy to win this game. But if the Trojans could pull off the win over JMU, how would they do it?
I mean, look, they've been a consistent team, low-key, the last couple of years, right? Troy kind of gone under the radar, but in the Sun Belt, like, they've won. I think they're back-to-back, right? Winners of the past 2 Sun Belts the last couple of years, and they've been there in 3 times in the last 4 years, I believe. So, look, I mean, they're not a bad team. They've been under the radar. I think, if their key to win the game against James Madison is their defense. They're going to have to keep, JMU's quarterback, Barnett or Barrett, whatever his name is. He's mobile, right? He can do a lot of different things. Can do stuff with his arm, with his legs. So in order to keep that game close and potentially get a win, you got to prevent James Madison from scoring a lot of points, right? Your defense has to step up. And time of possession is a big thing too. Well, when you're on offense, you got to make sure you're holding the ball, having long drives, keeping JMU's offense off the field. So I think if Troy were to win, that's the recipe, but I just don't see it, happening. I think JMU's offense is too good. And, I think Barnett is, he's shown that he can do a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Barnett is a fantastic quarterback. They've also got a 1,000-yard receiver this year in Wayne Knight, not the guy that played Newman in Seinfeld, the wide receiver for James Madison. So, yeah, I've got James Madison. It looks like Tondo and Jake have JMU all across the board. Quick one, but we're going to pack it up on the Sun Belt. Conference USA. Kennesaw State, Jacksonville State. This one's being played in Jacksonville, Alabama, but Kennesaw are the road dogs at 2.5 points. These teams are only separated by one win. This is a tough conference. Obviously, Kennesaw is pretty much out of the question for a Group of 5 college football playoff bid. But how can they finish off their regular season really well and then possibly move into a high-quality non-playoff bowl game?
For Kennesaw?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, another team, their opponent, right? You look at Jacksonville State. They won the Conference USA last year, right? So it's kind of similar when you're looking at Jacksonville State and Troy, right? They have that expertise. They've been there. Their team's experienced, right? So Kennesaw State, it's kind of new for them, right? So I think that's going to be a factor, but I think Kennesaw State has shown throughout this year how they played, in conference play. Like, I think that they're going to be able to take care of business. The spread is pretty small. I think it's 2.5 going into this game, but I think they cover that. I think, look, they were 6-0 at home this year. I know they're going to Jack State, 3-3 on the road. So, what team are you going to get, right? When it comes to Kennesaw State, I think if they play to their full potential, then they'll be fine. But, this isn't going to be a runaway game. Jack State 5-0 at home this year too. So, both teams have been good at their home base. So, we'll see what happens. I think it's going to be a close one. I think it's going to come down on the wire, but I like Kennesaw State in this one.
Absolutely. I've got Kennesaw State as well. We've got Tondo and Zimmer have Kennesaw State, so we've got another one across the board. This next game, the American. This one is where I differ from all three of you guys. You have North Texas. I've got Tulane. Make the case for why the Mean Green are taking down the Green Wave in New Orleans on Friday.
Look, North Texas, I mean, I think their offense has been electric this year. They've done really well offensively on side of the ball. Tulane, I mean, even Sumrall said it, right, earlier in the year. He's like, I don't know how we're ranked, right? Like, we're a mediocre team, right? And I think that helps for, motivation factor. And it has helped them over the last month. But there's been times this year where Tulane has looked pretty brutal. Right. They are 10-2, right? So they have a great record, but the games where they lost, they lost to UTSA 48-26, right? That's a bad loss. Like UTSA, if you're Tulane, you shouldn't be losing, to UTSA by that margin. They lost early in the year to Duke, or they beat Duke. They lost. Who was their other loss?
45-10 to Ole Miss.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Ole Miss. So there you go. I mean, that shouldn't be a close game, but, the UTSA one sticks out. But consistently across the board, like, they let up a good amount of points this year, their defense. And, North Texas has such an explosive offense. I think that could be a problem for Tulane.
Yeah. I mean, with that, I counter with Tulane's 23-3 win over, again, Northwestern. Bad Big Ten team, but still a Big Ten team. And then a 34-27 win over Duke, who we're talking about, is on the way to a possible ACC championship. Then you take a look at North Texas's only loss of the year in conference against a ranked opponent, but 63-36 against South Florida. I mean,
right.
How do you compare that to, Tulane's 2 losses?
I mean, if you look at Tulane, right, a lot of this year, they had a lot of one possession games, right? Like they only beat South Alabama by 2 points. They beat Eastern Carolina by 7 points, Army 7 points, Memphis 6 points. So a lot of their games they got away with, right? They could very easily have a lot more losses on their schedule. I just think, when North Texas has won, it's been more convincing, right? Across the board, they've put up over 50 points, like in half of their games, right? They put up 55 against UTSA that Tulane lost to. They put up 54 against Charlotte. They put up 53 against UAB, 56 against Rice, 52 against Temple, right? And three of those their last regular season games, they had over 50 points. So I just think that's the big thing. I mean, they like I said, I'm going back to it, but they have an explosive offense, can put up a lot of points. Is Tulane's defense going to be able to stop that? I know Tulane has an offense that can match it. They can put up points too. But, Tulane's been very lucky in a lot of these tight games this year. I think North Texas, if it's that type of game, a shootout, I think North Texas is going to beat them.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, I've got the green wave, and we'll see which green prevails there. Also kicking off at 8:00. This is an important one. This is if UNLV wins this one, they'll probably be watching a TV Sunday morning to see how things shake out for them. But UNLV versus Boise State, Mountain West Championship game. Who you got in this one?
I like UNLV here. They are the underdog, but UNLV's been pretty impressive. Boise, great year last year. We all know that with Ashton Jeanty. They're not the same team that they were. The prior year or prior years. They're 8-4 this year. They kind of snuck into the Mountain West Championship. Their last game of the season barely got by Utah State. They were really lucky to win that game. They only beat them by a point, right? So, I just don't think that Boise is the same Boise team that we're used to, right? The explosive offense, being able to move the ball quickly. UNLV's been pretty consistent on offense. They've put up a lot of points as well. So, for some reason, I like UNLV to go in and get the win. I mean, they lost to Boise earlier in the year. That's also a factor. You want that rematch, that redemption game. But UNLV's only two losses are to, Boise State and New Mexico. And New Mexico was another great team in the Mountain West this year that easily could have, made that conference championship game. They finished the year with 6 wins in a row, New Mexico, right? We're 9-3 overall and 6-2 in the conference, right? So they were right there in the picture as well. But UNLV, they are a team that, again, scores a lot of points offensively, but lets up a lot of points defensively. They've let up 337 points against them this year, which is the second highest, or not. They're in the middle of the pack, but still. But compared to other teams in the Mountain West, they're on the higher end of that. So I don't know. We'll see. But I think Boise doesn't have what they're used to. I think UNLV will be able to make stops when they need to, and I think they take care of business.
Yeah, our crew has got UNLV right across the board. Now we're moving into Saturday, starting at noon. BYU versus Texas Tech. Now, this is the first really, really tough one. No, I don't want to say the first really tough one, but the first tough one of the day. Let's see. You've got Texas Tech. Jake's got Texas Tech. Tondo's got Texas Tech. I've got BYU. I'll start off with my case for BYU. I just think it's hard to beat a team twice. BYU lost this first matchup 29-7. But if you really look at the rest of Texas Tech's resume, they don't really do well when games are played super close. I mean, you look at that, 26-22 loss to Arizona State. That's a pretty weak matchup for Texas Tech, and BYU is a team that can really defend the red zone very well against a Texas Tech team that is not very efficient in the red zone. So if this game becomes really grinded out, short yardage, a lot of red zone plays, I think BYU is going to take this one. But if Texas Tech gets out early, builds up a big lead, how do you feel like they're going to clinch this one against BYU?
Yeah, I think that's the key, right? If Tech's able to start early and start fast and put up points, I think BYU is going to be in a lot of trouble and not going to be able to rebound from it. I think BYU, they've had a great defense all year, right? But a low-scoring game in this Big 12 championship helps BYU, right? If Texas Tech puts up points, I just don't think BYU has the offense to be able to match Texas Tech's offense. I mean, Baron Morton, he's been unbelievable. One of the underrated quarterbacks in college football, had a great year this year. BYU relies so heavily on their offensive ground game on the run, but you look at Texas Tech, you talk about their offense, their defense is also pretty good. And they got guys like Jake Rodriguez, who's been mentioned as a Heisman candidate that plays both ways. He's really impressive, but Texas Tech's defense is not anything to mess around with either. So, BYU's got to keep it close. They got to keep it low scoring. And if they're not able to do so, I see Tech, winning big here.
Yeah. What do you feel like could carry over? What do you want Texas Tech to carry over the most from their first meeting with BYU into this game?
Well, I think on the defensive side of the ball, right, they held BYU to only, I think, like 250 yards offensively. So if you can do that again, 255, right? So if you can do that again, that's huge, right? If you can prevent BYU from matching you, scoring points, your offense is going to be able to score some points, right? Even against a defense like BYU. But I think, looking at the first game, that helped them, right? That was a factor that allowed them to win so convincingly. So I think if they can do that again, that's the key.
And then also kicking off at 12 at Ford Field, we've got Western Michigan versus Miami of Ohio. Western Michigan is -2.5 to win the MAC. We've all got Western Mich. What do you like out of Western Michigan this year?
I mean, Western Michigan's been good, but it's more of Miami that worries me, right? Miami's another team like the MAC, kind of like the Mountain West. There were a lot of teams that could have been in this game. Toledo was 6-2 within the conference. Ohio was 6-2 within the conference. Miami, Ohio kind of snuck in there, but they're a 5-loss team, right? So, they haven't had that great of a year. Western Michigan has been pretty good. I just think if you look at it head to head, I think Western Michigan's a better team overall. Looking at Miami, overall they lost to Toledo earlier in the year. They lost to Ohio. They lost to these other MAC teams, right? They did beat Western Michigan at the end of October, right? They beat them 26-17. So again, you have that redemption factor. If you're Western Michigan, you want to get that bounce back game. But overall, you just look at these two teams. I just think Western Michigan's more talented. I think that they're going to beat Miami. We lost your audio, Basil.
4:00. We've got a standalone game between Alabama and Georgia in the SEC championship. A matchup we've seen many, many times over the years. One that's really favored Alabama, except, in the national championship game. But still, Alabama, they've already taken the win over Georgia earlier this year. What can the Dogs do to overcome the Crimson Tide?
Well, I think the first time that they played this year earlier, right, was I think the key takeaway from that game was Ty Simpson. He looked unbelievable the first time the Tide played the Bulldogs. he was almost nearly perfect. And that was, early in the year after their, initial struggles. But in the last couple of weeks, Alabama, they've been a little concerning on the offensive side of the ball. They've had some trouble moving the ball. And Georgia's defense is legit, and their offense has actually been picking it up as well, right? So, I think in this game, you look at the two quarterbacks, you look at Ty Simpson, you look at Gunnar Stockton. I think Ty Simpson is a better overall quarterback. You have the weapons. Ryan Williams hasn't really been utilized as much as we had hoped out of Bama. Does he have a breakout game against Georgia this week? What does Georgia's offense look like? I think Bama, I'm taking them just because of the implications for the college football playoff. Like, if they don't show up here, they could potentially get bounced. I don't think they will, but they got to at least keep this close if they're not going to win. But I just think based on history, they have Georgia's number, and I think this is a big game for Bama, and there's a lot more to lose if you're Bama than you're Georgia. So, give me the Tide.
Love it. I think we've got the Tide all across the board. Yeah, we're rocking with Alabama here. How would you limit Ty Simpson, though?
I mean, you got to get after him, right? You got to kind of rattle him. You got to take away the run game too, right? If you take away the run game and you put him in third and longs, then you're putting more on Ty Simpson's shoulders, right? And I think that's the key for Georgia. Put him in uncomfortable situations, try to get him to turn over the ball in third and long situations, and kind of rush his decision making. And if you're able to do that and cause turnovers, then I think you can beat this Alabama team. Look at Oklahoma, right? When Oklahoma played Bama, that was their recipe. They had 3 turnovers. I think they scored 17 points off of turnovers in that game, and that's what allowed them to be, victorious against the Tide. So if you're going to beat Alabama, you got to make them make mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we're moving into the 8 o'clock window. Let's talk about the ACC championship first. Duke versus Virginia in Charlotte. We talked about it before. A lot of very interesting playoff implications here. 3 of us have got Virginia. Jake's got Duke. Why do the Cavaliers have the upper hand here, aside from being, the 17th best team in the country?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Virginia, you look at their defense, they've only allowed 20 points per game, on average. So they've won 9 out of the last 10 meetings between these two programs. Virginia's having a great year. Duke's been kind of up and down all year, right? I think they're another team that's lucky to have snuck into this position, and they probably shouldn't have been here, but SMU, blew it against Cal, which was heartbreaking for me as an SMU alum now. But I just think that Virginia has the edge here all around. They played earlier in the year. They won 34-17. Their defense was able to limit Duke, especially in the first half. So I like the Cavs here, but I do think potentially this is a big game for the head coach of Duke, Manny Diaz, because we mentioned it at the beginning of the show. Penn State, they're struggling to find a head coach right now. They have one of the worst recruiting classes. So many recruits have decided to leave because they don't have a head coach. I think that Manny Diaz right now is a potential, option for Penn State to bring in. He was the defensive coordinator there prior to taking the head coaching job at Duke. So I think he wins this game. He's an ACC champion, puts another mark on his resume, and then maybe Penn State swoops in and grabs him from the ACC. So we'll see what happens, but I just think Virginia's a better team here. I think that they've been pretty consistent this year, with the exception of a few games against Wake Forest and things of that nature. But I like the Cavs to get the win here and get in the playoff and represent the ACC as the only team in the ACC to get in this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And a fun tidbit for this game, aside from what will happen afterwards, potentially, But this will be whoever wins this game, this will be their first ACC title this century. Virginia's last ACC football title came in 1995, Duke 1989.
Wow.
So that's really fun. All right, and then our final game of the night, two undefeated teams, two juggernauts of college football this season. One's the reigning champ, and one is just, Curt Cignetti's squad that is looking to defy every single narrative that's been placed on this team over the past 2 years. That's been placed on him. I mean, obviously there was that great quote by him, I win, Google it. Ohio State versus Indiana in the Big Ten championship game. How is this going to go down? I mean, I don't even really know how else to tee this one up.
I think it's going to be a great game. I mean, Ohio State, we know, has been dominant all year, ever since really the Michigan game last year when they lost to Michigan. Then they went on that run in the college football playoffs. They ended up winning the national championship. They've had a great year this year, but, they haven't really been challenged too much, right? I think this Indiana team offers a unique challenge to them. Indiana is a team that, they're good. They're sound defensively. They can put up a ton of points offensively. You got the quarterback matchup between Julian Sayin and Fernando Mendoza. Fernando Mendoza has been, in the Heisman discussion all year. But then on the defensive side, you got Caleb Downs for Ohio State, who's been huge for them. I think this is going to be a high-scoring game. I think it's going to be tight. I do like Ohio State to get there just because I think they have a chip on their shoulder. I think they didn't win the Big Ten last year. Last week was a big week for them. They had to get over that Michigan hump. They were able to do so. I think this is another tally that they want. They want the Big Ten championship. Ryan Day, has alluded to it. So, I think that Ohio State pulls it out in a close one, but I would not be surprised if Indiana somehow pulls it off because what Curt Cignetti has been able to do, there at Indiana has been unbelievable.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've got Ohio State all around the board here. And that's it. That'll do it for the regular season. And then Sunday morning, we will have our final college football playoff bracket. I usually finish this off with, any more games that we want to talk about, but that's it. That's
we
all. We
covered them all. Yeah.
This weekend. So Cole, I mean, any closing thoughts? I think this might be the last football house of the season, but I think we'll probably regather in some other form throughout the year. Obviously, we've got another 2 months of football, give or take, to play. But Cole, any final thoughts on the college football regular season in 2020?
No, I mean, it's been a great year. A lot of surprises, right? I think there's a lot of teams in the college football playoff that, you asked us at the beginning of the year, we probably wouldn't have had them, right? A&M has been super impressive. Ole Miss, great year. There's some teams there. Indiana, what they've done, Texas Tech. There's a lot of teams that have really impressed this year and come out of the woodwork. This week obviously has huge implications for what the final 12 look like. But, no matter what we get, I think the first round matchups are going to be great. We'd love that, they're at the home stadiums of the higher seed. That's always a good thing. And then, you get into the quarterfinals and the semis and, the big boys will probably be there. There probably won't be too many upsets, but you never know. And, we'll see if Ohio State can repeat or, if someone from the SEC is going to take back, that title and bring the national championship back to the SEC. A lot of storylines, a lot of fun football that's going to be on throughout December and January. And, we might not have another show this year, but we'll definitely be making our picks each week and that'll be on our socials. So look out for that. And I'm excited. It's been a great year and, a lot of fireworks left.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll definitely hop on camera in some form by the end of the season. I just don't know if it'll be in full podcast form. But a couple of my closing thoughts. I mean, this will probably be better suited towards the end of the playoff itself. But I'm really happy that this year in the playoffs we are getting the top 4 teams overall getting the bye instead of the top 4 conference champs. I liked it last year, but seeing how it's shaken out this year, I think it's a much needed improvement. Obviously, this format will be tweaked forever and ever because the SEC will never be happy. Before we get to an eventual 16-team playoff, which I'm going on the record and saying I'm against, but I feel like it's on the horizon. The next tweak I would love to see would be campus sites for quarterfinal games. I think it's kind of weird that I don't want to say punishing, but we're not giving the top 4 seeds that reward of hosting a playoff game in their home stadiums.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it also opens the door for those bowl games, right? Because usually in the quarters and the semis are, your historic New Year's 6 bowl games, right? The Orange Bowl, the Cotton Bowl, all those, right? If you put it at home, the higher seeds, home field, then you can put those bowls for, some teams that were on the fringe that didn't make it, teams like, Vandy, like Utah that we talked about, like, Miami, if they don't get in, then they can play in those bowl games, towards the beginning of the new year or shortly thereafter. So,
or even a team that gets knocked out of the first round.
Yeah. Yeah.
If they want to do that. I don't know if they'd want to do that, but
I mean, I wouldn't count it out, right? I mean, we've seen crazier things happen. So
I think if I could propose one more tweak, I think honestly I've said this before, I would get the bowl games entirely out of the college football playoff. I think that, I love the Rose Bowl. I love, the whole concept of the New Year's 6. I think you should never win a Rose Bowl game and then consider your season coming up short because then you didn't win the game after that, right? Like, I feel like the Rose Bowl, the Cotton Bowl, the Sugar Bowl should serve as like a grand finale to your season, whether or not it's involved with the national championship. I just feel like, we're kind of diminishing these games a little bit. We've been doing it for a long time. And also playing in 2 bowl games, like playing in the Fiesta Bowl and the Rose Bowl in 2 different rounds of the playoffs, it just felt ridiculous to me these past 2 years.
I agree. It takes away from the appeal, like in the historic nature to them.
Yeah, it's just weird. It's a weird means to an end. But yeah, I mean that's pretty much all I've got. So thank you, Cole, for hopping along with me on this ride. Thank you, Jake and Will, for bringing in your picks every single week. And thank you to everyone who's been watching us week in and week out. Like we said, we've still got so much more for you guys. We've got so much more for you guys on the House Enterprise blog. If you're watching in landscape mode, you can see all of our socials on the ticker below. If you're watching in portrait mode on YouTube, you can see all of our socials on the ticker up top. We've got so much great stuff coming for you guys. We've got a lot of college basketball on the blog. Ohm Brown just broke down the entire Red Sox offseason up to this point. So if you're a baseball fan, you should definitely check that out. But for Cole Hughes, I'm Sam Basil. This has been the Football House, and we'll see you guys next time.